Edith Head was one of Hollywood's most well-known costume designers. She was a phenomenal woman who worked in the industry dominated by men for 54 years from 1927 and 1981. She was nominated for 35 Academy Awards and won 8 times with films such as All About Eve in 1951, The Heiress in 1950, and Roman Holiday in 1954. She began her journey as a costume sketch artist, then design assistant at Paramount in 1924. She was only 26 years old then. In 1938, she was given the position of chief designer. By 1930s, she proved to be one of Hollywood's leading costume designers and continued to work for Paramount for 43 years. In 1967, she started working at Universal Pictures. She was swayed by her close colleague Alfred Hitchcock, who moved to Universal Pictures in 1960. Edith was surrounded by art and fashion from a young age. Her childhood years were rarely discussed even with her close friends. When Edith was interviewed, she shared a few anecdotes. However, they always lacked details. At 20 years old, she received a Bachelor of Arts degree in Letters and Science with honors. At 21, a Master of Arts degree in Romance language. She was also teaching as a French language teacher at Bishop's School. At 22, she started teaching French and art at Hollywood School for Girls. Edith would go on to say later on in her life, "I have a theory that once you've taught, you can do anything." Classical Hollywood cinema was active from 1917 to 1960s. Then, movies were considered a business. It was filmmakers making entertainment, not art. Thus, filmmaking was standardized and used mass productions. In the early days of cinema as business, producers realized that moviegoers favored narrative films, one that had a story, rather than one that was simply visually appealing. Thus, the narrative visual style developed to be one of classical Hollywood's characteristics. Hollywood films were usually constructed around a main character, a protagonist. The character would be charismatic and heroic. This character will also learn something or grow in terms of character at the end of the story. There will also be an antagonist, usually evil or dangerous. The character's actions will also have clear motivations. The studios felt that it was important to make the audience feel emotionally, to make them laugh, cry, or to scare them. They wanted to make the viewers feel like they got what they paid for, another aspect of movie as a business. This introduced the idea of having either personal or generalized conflict in a story. Generalized conflicts being ones in a bigger theme such as human versus natural world, humans versus machines, and humans versus society. Hollywood films would typically contain a 3-act structure where there is a beginning, middle, and end. Films were usually told in a chronological order, a linear story. Flashbacks were also sometimes used to show an event that happened in the past to explain a certain motivation of the character. Art direction and costume design from films in classical Hollywood era were influenced by Art Nouveau, Art Modern, and streamlined modern styles, now generally known as Art Deco. For Edith, character was always priority when designing her costumes. One of the reasons why Edith Head is highly respected is because of her competence that she showed. She did a lot of work during the period of the Great Depression and World War II. During this period, Hollywood was going through an extremely tough time with very little budget to produce films. Thus, it was especially difficult for costume designers to buy materials. Often, she had to rummage through old costumes to see whether it suited the films. Some celebrities were even told to bring their own clothes that looked best on screen. She had to work with practically nothing, but still somehow made the films of that era look glamorous. She often designed for films of the genre comedy, drama, romance, or musical. These are all genres that thrived in classical Hollywood. When Edith first started out at Paramount, she went through many struggles as a young designer. During that period, she designed costumes for silent films such as The Wanderer in 1925. With her success also came her learning points. Director of The Wanderer had to stop shooting as the elephant started to eat the wreath of flowers and fruits Edith had made for it to wear. She said, "Nobody told me that elephants ate leaves." She had learned a lesson of pre-production planning that would assist her excellently in the many years to come. Edith had moved on fast from her days of being an assistant, and soon her name was well known all over the city.
I think that most people don't realize motion pictures are not fashion. You see, so many people say to me, "Isn't it lovely to be a fashion designer and dress these beautiful scars. That is not what happens.
In this video, I will be analyzing costumes from two films, Double Indemnity and All About Eve. Double Indemnity, directed by Billy Wilder in 1944, is a film noir about an insurance representative who let himself be talked into a murder fraud scheme that arouses an insurance investigator's suspicions. The costumes in Double Indemnity revealed a lot about the characters. For Phyllis, her character is one that only sees money. Marriage is nothing to her. She only cares for her husband's money. Her costumes are designed to be seductive, but not directly. Clothes that are too expensive or extravagant would attract too much attention. The first time we see Phyllis, she is dressed in a bath towel. The first impression you will get of her is that she's rich enough to be lazing around in a big house with a maid, and has enough time on her hands to be leisurely sunbathing. She's comfortable and confident of her body, enough to be able to stand almost naked in front of complete strangers. After Phyllis gets dressed, we are introduced to an accessory that would represent a lot in the film. Attention is brought to her anklet. It represents Phyllis' exoticism, which Nev can't stop thinking about. However, her outfit clashes with this exotic image of her. Innocent, prim and proper, a ruffled front shirt dress, extremely feminine and romantic. We all know that the femme fatale is never what she is. When Nev comes back to see Phyllis, we see her in a deceptive floral pattern shirt. Her personality of deviousness begins to show, and her plan. True intentions of the scene are revealed through the huge contrast between the real topic of the scene and the topic on the surface. When Phyllis goes to Nev's apartment to look for him, she is dressed in a simple sweater with a pencil skirt. This outfit depicts her as innocent and reputable, a wife who needs a man's help to get out of her husband's grasp. Although direct, Edith has chosen this outfit specifically to say something. Popularized by Lara Turner in 1937, They Won't Forget. The sweater clings tightly to her body and is sexy in a subtle way. Nev falls for her tricks and does not realize her true intentions. While signing the papers, Phyllis is dressed in a V-neck dress accessorized with a sparkling brooch. As her husband signs the papers, the crystal sparkles and glitters, suggesting her deceptiveness as her plan starts to fall in place. After her husband dies, Phyllis plays pretend as a widow, dressed to follow her plan in a box beret with a veil covering her face with a grey suit and black gloves. She is dressed for the part. She fools everyone with her tears and needy appearance. For her last costume, we see her in a white silk jumpsuit, the most extravagant we've seen Phyllis throughout the whole film. Even though masculine, her outfit is overall feminine. In the end, she shoots him, but can't shoot him again. Phyllis dies at the hands of Nev heartlessly, and we still wonder at the end of the film, who is this woman? All About Eve, directed by Joseph L., is a 1950 drama film about an aging Broadway star whose position is being threatened by a younger and more promising star that was once her friend. Edith Head designed the costumes for the character of Margot. The film is not in a linear timeline. It starts with a scene in the present, however, in the next scene jumps to the past, to the first time Eve meets Margot. The contrast between Margot's and Eve's costumes is a huge theme in the story. At the first scene of the film, at the award ceremony, the pair are wearing costumes of different colors. However, before this, Eve would wear extremely similar costumes to Margot's. Jumping back into the past, when Eve first meets Margot, she is dressed in a humble trench coat with a hat, differentiating her from everyone else in the room who is dressed in expensive clothing. When Eve starts to work as Margot's assistant, she dresses in a humble manner. We start to see the similarities in their costumes while they prepare for Margot's party. Margot is dressed in an off-the-shoulder black gown. Eve wears a similar-looking dress, except for there is lace around the collar, representing Eve's innocence. Margot's outfit during the audition scene represents the character's feelings exactly, suffocated with a bow tied around her neck, with the situation choking her, Eve having the upper hand. When we reach the award ceremony, both Eve and Margot are wearing shawls. However, Margot's shawl is translucent, suggesting that her character has nothing to hide. For Eve, an upcoming star, she has a lot to hide. Edith Head, with her attention to great detail and great skill, has proven to be one of Hollywood's greatest costume designers of all time, and will go on to be our role model for many years to come. Bette Davis once commented about Edith, "Through the work of a fine costume designer, an actor or actress can become the character. We may rehearse our lines, our movements, and our expressions, but until we finally slip into the costumes, does everything come together so that we actually become the character. If we are not comfortable in those clothes, If they do not project the character, the costume designer has failed us. Edith Head has never failed. As filmmakers, we should all know that detail, hard work, and passion is the key to success. This is shown perfectly by Edith Head.
À la Concorde, un orchestre a mis le corps. Tous les oiseaux du point du jour chantent l'amour. Aux Champs-Élysées, aux Champs-Élysées, au soleil, sous la pluie.